Hi sports fans, welcome to Sportschat. I'm Craig.
I'm Dean.
And today, you'd think, given the time of year, we'd be discussing the upcoming AFL finals or the beginning of the NBA, NHL or NFL seasons. But no, today, sports fans, we're bringing you the thrilling world of sports ownership. Yes, we're going to discuss the ownership models of three men who own teams in three of the major sporting markets, them being North America, Europe and Australia. What I'll do is I'll transfer you over to Dean. He can give you a brief rundown of the history of the ownership in those three organisations.
Yeah,
Dean.
so thanks Craig for that. As Craig just touched on, when we're talking about three major markets in the world of sports ownership. So starting off with North America, which is for the majority of the time always been private ownership around the sports clubs in the country, in the area. And then we're going to move into talking about in the European market, which is just recently in the last 20-25 years started to indulge in private ownership in the sports market. And then finally we'll touch on Australia, which is more community based, not really private ownership. Yeah.
Okay, as Dean touched on, the first of those we'll be discussing is the North American market. Most of those teams today are privately owned, either owned by individuals or groups. The individual we're focusing on for our discussion of really about their benefits or the reasons why they purchase is Stan Kroenke. He owns, among other things, the Los Angeles Rams, the Denver Nuggets, the Colorado Avalanche, and he also owns the Pepsi Center, which is relevant because that's the home venue of both the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah.
Now, as we've mentioned, we're discussing the economic and non-economic reasons. The economic, first and foremost reasons, is pretty obvious. He has the money. He made his money as a property developer and also married into the Walmart family. For those of you who don't know, Walmart's the biggest American department store, and the family that created that is worth billions of US dollars. So money's never going to be a problem for him, for Stan the man. Now, he bought into the Denver clubs basically, to bring ice hockey to Colorado and to basically prevent the Nuggets from moving. As we mentioned, he also owns the venue they play in, so It's money in for Stan, money out for Stan. Either way, it's a win for Stan. The latest team he bought was the St. Louis Rams at the time. They were in negotiations for a new arena with the government in St. Louis. Those fell through, so Stan, with the assistance of his colleagues, up and moved the team to Los Angeles, where they play in the LA Coliseum, which hosted the LA Olympics in '84. They're moving into a new venue in the near future that'll be used for the upcoming Olympics in about 9 years' time.
And the World Cup.
And the World Cup, yeah. The US hosting the World Cup in 2026, and I'm sure they'll play games in that venue.
Yeah.
So most of the drivers that have driven Stan to his investments, as we've stated, are economic based. He's in it for the dough, in it for the money. There is some community based. He may be, it's hard to know what major fan he is, whether he's an NBA fan, an NHL fan, or an NFL fan. But economics were his main drivers as to why he bought into those teams. Now, he's also recently made an acquisition into the European market, into the European soccer market. He's bought a controlling interest in Arsenal. Now, I'm going to make an assumption that because he's American, he's really bought into Arsenal just because it can be a money-making exercise. This also transitions across to the area of Dean's expertise, which is European football. He's going to discuss the man that bought the Chelsea Football Club and turned them into a powerhouse. That's Roman Abramovich. So, yes. Dean, why don't you go through a bit of Roman's history with Chelsea?
Yes, because I am the football expert on the podcast.
Yep, I mean, look at him.
All right, yeah, so Roman Abramovich bought Chelsea in 2003 as a private owner, and since then the club has been quite successful, one of the most successful clubs in the world since 2003 in the past 16 years. They've won multiple trophies and championships. And since he took over, they've increased not just their on-field performance, he's also put a lot of his money and resources into the investment of the club and making it have state-of-the-art facilities and training grounds and just an awesome complex down at Stamford Bridge. So he's really invested well into the club, and also, of course, the on-field success, getting great players for the club, and which leads to multiple titles, because I don't think they had won a modern-day Premier League before
50 years,
he came in, so long time. So he's definitely helped a lot, and obviously led him to one of the best trophies in Europe, the Champions League in 2010.
So for someone who's a non-football, non-soccer follower, only besides FIFA, the video game, So would you say that Chelsea have now reached that upper echelon? They get mentioned in amongst the Man Uniteds, Man Cities, and sort of Arsenals or Barcelonas in terms of notoriety outside their sport? You'd say they've transcended their sport under Abramovich's ownership?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. They're always, anyone you could ask on the street would know who Chelsea are, what their colour is. They're the big blue. Everyone knows who they are. I think also a lot of it has come from their on-field success, not just because they're like a rich club. You see some of the rich clubs in the world, but also that doesn't translate to on-field success. So, I think it's a bit of both the success and also like just the money and the fame of the club from him.
So would you say that the main drivers for Roman purchasing Chelsea when he did, you say that was he saw it as a money-making exercise, or was it more of a passion project for him?
Again, I think a bit of both, because obviously he's trying to make money maybe first and foremost, but also we did do some history on him, and he is a soccer fan at heart from Russia. I think he used to own Moscow, that we were looking at earlier. And I think definitely as a soccer fan at heart, he always wanted to own a soccer club. He has the money, so why not? But also it's an economic benefits for him. There's plenty there.
Yeah, he basically, I believe, bought the team because he's made his money from the oil boom between the changeover between communism and commercialism and capitalism in Russia. So he basically also, I think the first reason he bought the team was that he literally just had the money.
Why not?
Like, he's been known for his mega yachts and things he owns. He owns a lot of stuff, does Roman. Yeah. I think he also did it as well because some people believe some of the ways he made his money in the past may have been a bit, sketchy. Again, don't sue me, Roman. I don't have the money. Don't come after me. So it sort of brought him sort of legitimacy or influence in Europe because, if you own one of the big soccer teams in Europe, it's a way of opening a lot of business doors as well. So I think that's another driver as well. And that could be an economic and non-economic because he became a fan because he bought the team so much. So look, what we'll do there, sports fans, is we'll just take a short break while we get our breath back, and then we'll come back and we'll discuss the Australian man who's bought into the NBL and revolutionised it and made money for it over the year and turned into a profit-making exercise and really boosted the profile of basketball in this country, and that's Larry Kesselman.
Superman Larry.
Now, as we said, when we're going to break, we're going to discuss the Australian owner of the NBL, that's Larry Kesselman. Now, before we go into the NBL, we'll just give you a quick background of Larry. He started Dodo Phone Internet. They had those annoying ads with the internet that flies and all that. He started that. So he's shown in that he's a shrewd businessman, and I'll declare an interest. I'm a long-time customer. Way to go, Larry. Your service is great. Send me free stuff. Now, some years ago, might have been about 5 to 10 years ago, he bought into the National Basketball League, which at the time was basically on its knees. It was seen as a bit of a joke.
Yeah.
Its crowds were down. They'd have teams that had struggled to play out the season. Teams would fold every year. They'd be constantly looking for investors. There were all kinds of issues and problems that they'd had. Larry basically walked into Basketball Australia and said, I will buy the NBL from you, and kind of met little resistance. They kind of went, well, okay, because he could see, as a businessman, he could do something to this similar to what Frank Lowy was looking at with the A-League. Yeah. Frank Lowy doesn't own the A-League, but he was the controlling interest. Larry Kesselman owns the NBL. And also, Larry is, if you hear him speak, a die-hard basketball fan. So that's probably one of the non-economic drivers, is that he feels that basketball could be better represented in Australia than it was. Now, he has led to a vast improvement over the years. It has taken some time. He was one that rationalised a number of Melbourne teams. He took us from having 2 or 3 down to 1, which was the Melbourne Tigers, which for people that were my age were the Melbourne team. They were rebranded as Melbourne United, which did ostracise some basketball fans, but as a whole has been a raging success. You just have to look at their attendances and who attends, and they're massive. Even it's helped re-energise the Sydney Kings. Yeah. When the NBL was struggling, they were actually winning championships, but no one was still going. Now, that could just be a Sydney thing. Sydney people don't usually go to sporting events. But with the likes of Andrew Gaze's coaching, even though he wasn't that successful, Andrew Bogut came back and played for the team. Yeah. He actually has the option to become a part owner of a team. Yeah,
sure he will.
So, that's something he could look at when he's old and his knees are past it, of doing. So, so that's what Larry has also been able to do. He's also been able to get the league a TV rights deal. Yeah. They're now on SBS Viceland, which I'm sure people will struggle to find. But it's a start. They were on
It's
9
there.
Go. They've moved to SBS Viceland.
Moving up in the world.
They also produce their own content.
Yeah.
That's another idea of Larry. So it's like Larry basically, again, all these men do it for economic reasons as well. Larry's seen a business he can buy into and make money out of.
Yeah.
And it's a passion project for him because primarily he's still running Dodo. So this
Yeah.
is a passion project for Larry.
And he's made it like it's a real event to go to. I think we
Yeah.
were speaking about it off air before.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've been to any
I
Melbourne
can't say I
United
have.
games
I
recently.
can't say I have. I believe you have. in the
Yeah, I
past.
have, and you could see in the first row they call it the celebrity row. I
Mhm.
saw Brendan Favola.
Yep.
I saw Hutchie, who owns Croc Media.
Yeah.
And I saw some AFL players in the
And I
row
think
as
with
well.
with Craig Hutchison and Croc Media, I think he's even looking at buying an interest into Melbourne United, the team.
Yeah, I heard
I mean, if he
about
doesn't watch out, Larry, I mean, Craig Hutchison will own the league. I mean, he owns
will.
one of everything. He owns a
He
radio
does.
station, TV rights. I mean, Hutchie, for a fat bloke, I mean, really, he
He's
really
done
is.
alright.
He's doing all right for a bloke who was a hack journalist. But also, one thing he's done is with the entertainment, from what I've heard from people, is he's made it along the American lines, but not too American, which
Yeah.
is something the NBL fell into.
Yeah, they still want their own.
Like,
authenticity.
if it became too American, people got turned off.
Yeah,
But they've managed to find that happy balance.
so far, yeah.
Now, in the summer sports market in this country, I'll be honest, cricket is still king. Like, you know, test matches. If we play England, you can play as many basketball games as you like. People aren't
Yeah.
going to go. But on a grand scale of things, the NBL, I believe, and I think Dean will agree with me, have surpassed the A-League in terms of almost attendances
Yeah.
and eyeballs on screens,
Definitely.
which would be concerning for the A-League. That's another episode.
Not our problem.
That's another episode. The A-League would be having massive problems with where they've ended up 10 years in after their relaunch, but that's different. Whereas the NBL is going past them and starting to make inroads into the Big Bash, which we all know, being sports fans, launched with massive fanfare.
Yeah.
They'd sell out state grounds to watch state-level cricketers. That started to die away, so the NBL could even look at approaching them. Now, is this all Larry Kesselman's doing? No, he's brought in people under him, like Larry Senstock and all that have been able to manage it, but they've also been helped out by the fact that Larry is passionate about it. He's not
Yeah.
like Stan Kroenke, who, as we may not have mentioned earlier, is very hands-off as an owner.
Yeah.
Which-
What was Stan's nickname?
Silent Stan, he's known as. He's basically, unlike some of the owners, like I don't know if anyone's familiar with Mark Cuban, who owns the
Yeah.
Mavericks. You know,
Yeah.
he's been fined numerous times. I'm surprised he hasn't thrown on a singlet and played, you know, point guard for him.
He's a bit too much.
He's a bit too over the top. He's a bit too other way. Whereas Silent Stan's management style is, I've got all the money. I've got all the. I don't have all the know-how on how to put a team on field. Here's a check. Go and get someone who does.
Yeah.
Now, in America, that's a very accepted style. It's a very liked style. In Europe, he gets backlash at Arsenal because he's not seen
Exactly
at
right.
games. Like, I don't know if Dean here is old enough to remember that Elton John owned Watford.
No, I didn't know that.
No, or he didn't own him. He was like chairman.
Okay, yeah.
But he was at every game. He was in the scarf. He got in. The end of the ground is still named after him.
No, yeah.
He was hands-on. They loved him. Silent Stan, as the name suggests, isn't like that.
And you see, going back, Roman Abramovich is at a lot of
yeah.
Chelsea
Roman's
games as
like
well.
Roman's
Yeah.
like I think even his boats and planes have Chelsea branding on
Yeah.
them. Well, if I'd spent that kind of money, I'd have that everywhere too. You know, I'd have it on my plane, I'd have it on my car, I'd have it on the number plates.
Yeah.
You know, he's passionate. He's at all the games. He travels with the team. Like, you know,
Yeah.
wherever they play, he goes. If it's a fair income game.
Very hands-on.
Whereas, Stan's the opposite of that. I just write the checks. I like to be in the background. He never does media interviews. In our research, we couldn't find a media interview Stan gave that was about his teams.
Yeah.
He might have spoken about philanthropic measures, but not about his teams. So, as we've said, the main driver for these three men to buy these teams are economic.
Yeah.
But they all have their own reasons, non-economic. Stan's was to look like he give back to the community. He's got to do something with his money. Sometimes it could even be a tax dodge, but that's economic. Roman Abramovich was, I want to own a soccer team. I have a lot of money. I'm going to go buy one, and I may as well buy a good one.
And do what
So
I
he
want.
bought Chelsea and do what I want with it. Larry Kesselman was a basketball fan, saw a sport that anyone who has kids or nieces, nephews, brothers, basketball is massive with kids.
Yeah.
It is huge. Like, you know, it is massive. So there is a market there to make money. So, as we said, if you wish to discuss this further, please put it in our comments or email us. Our email address is below on the screen.
Yep.
And we thank our fans for watching. Next week we'll come back with something that's probably a bit lighter, or maybe even look at the problems of the A-League. I mean, hey, we're solving everyone's problems. We'll do that again next week.
Not?
I'm Craig.
I'm Dean.
And this was Sports Chat. We thank you for listening and enjoy your week.